The phone buzzed on the marble nightstand, vibrating violently against a crystal glass of scotch. The screen lit up with a single name, Elena. Sebastian looked at it, a moment that would define the rest of his life. He had a choice: answer the woman who had built his empire alongside him, or lean back into the arms of the woman he thought he desired. With a scoff of annoyance, he slid his finger across the screen. Decline. He silenced the call, and then he kissed his lover. He didn't know it yet, but that silence would scream in his nightmares for the rest of his life. Because Elena wasn't calling to ask when he'd be home. She was calling to say goodbye. The rain was hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse suite at the St. Regis in New York City. Inside, the air was warm, scented with expensive cologne and the lingering sweetness of Isabella's perfume. Sebastian Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Global and arguably the most powerful man in the tech logistics sector, loosened his tie. He was 35, handsome in a sharp, predatory way, with eyes that usually calculated profit margins, but were currently fixed on the woman pouring champagne across the room, Isabella Vance. She was everything his wife, Elena, wasn't anymore. Isabella was loud, spontaneous, and demanded attention. Elena? Elena had become quiet. She was the reliable foundation, the woman who managed his home, his social calendar, and his life with a silent efficiency that Sebastian had grown to resent. He mistook her peace for boredom. "Seb, darling," Isabella cooed, walking over with 2 flutes of Dom Perignon. "You seem distracted. The merger went through, didn't it?" "It did," Sebastian said, taking the glass. Stock rose 12% before the closing bell. "Then why the frown?" She sat on his lap, tracing the line of his jaw. "Forget about the office. Forget about everything else." Just then, his phone buzzed on the bedside table. It was a harsh, jarring sound in the quiet luxury of the room. Sebastian glanced over. The screen illuminated the dim room. Caller ID, Elena, wife. Isabella rolled her eyes, letting out a dramatic sigh. "Does she have a radar? Every time we're together, she calls. It's 9:30 p.m., Sebastian. She probably wants to know if you want chicken or fish for dinner tomorrow." Sebastian felt a surge of irritation. He had told Eleanor he was in a high-stakes meeting with investors from Tokyo. He had explicitly said, "Do not disturb me unless the house is on fire." The phone kept buzzing. "Bzzzt, bzzzt, bzzzt." "Ignore it," Isabella whispered, leaning in close, her lips brushing his ear. "Show me who you want to be with." Sebastian looked at the phone one last time. He thought about answering. For a split second, a strange chill ran down his spine, a biological instinct, perhaps. But then he looked at Isabella, at the excitement and the thrill of the forbidden. He reached out, his finger hovering over the green icon. Then, with a decisive swipe, he hit the red icon. Decline. He didn't just decline it. He flipped the phone face down. "Good boy," Isabella smiled. He kissed her, drowning out the nagging guilt in the back of his mind with the taste of expensive champagne. 1 hour later, Sebastian was buttoning his shirt, preparing to leave. The meeting was over. He needed to get back to his townhouse on the Upper East Side to maintain the charade. "Do you have to go?" Isabella asked from the bed, wrapped in the sheets. "You know I do. The gala is next week. If I don't make an appearance at home tonight, Elena will be suspicious," Sebastian said, checking his watch. He picked up his phone. He expected to see a text message from Eleanor. Usually, when he declined her calls, she would send a passive-aggressive text like, "Okay, just wanted to check in." But the screen was black. No texts. No voicemails from Eleanor. That was odd. However, there were 15 missed calls, not from Eleanor, 12 from Marcus Sterling, his chief legal officer and best friend, 3 from NYPD, 19th Precinct. Sebastian's stomach dropped. The champagne turned to acid in his gut. Marcus never called 12 times. Marcus was the calmest man he knew. He dialed Marcus immediately. "Seb?" Marcus's voice sounded wrong. It was breathless, panicked, stripped of its usual professional composure. "Where the hell have you been? I've been calling you for an hour." "I was in a meeting." "My phone was on silent," Sebastian lied automatically, walking toward the elevator. "What's going on? Is it the SEC?" "Forget the damn company, Sebastian!" Marcus shouted. Sebastian froze. Marcus never shouted. "It's Elena." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The elevator doors opened with a cheerful ding, but Sebastian couldn't move his feet. "What about Elena?" Sebastian asked, his voice barely a whisper. "There was an accident, Seb, on the FDR drive. It's raining hard, and a semi-truck hydroplaned." Marcus took a jagged breath. "She's at Mount Sinai. You need to get there. Now." "God." "Sebastian, they don't know if she's going to make it through the night." Sebastian dropped the phone. It hit the plush carpet of the hotel hallway with a dull thud. Decline. The image of his finger sliding across the screen flashed in his mind. Decline. He scrambled to pick up the phone and ran for the elevator, leaving Isabella shouting his name from the suite door. He didn't look back. The drive to Mount Sinai Hospital was a blur of red taillights and pouring rain. Sebastian ordered his driver to run 2 red lights, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "She's fine," he told himself. "Eleanor is tough. She's just injured. A broken leg. Whiplash. I'll pay for the best surgeons. I'll fix it. I fix everything." When he burst through the sliding doors of the emergency room, he was soaking wet, his tuxedo shirt unbuttoned at the collar, looking nothing like the composed billionaire featured in Forbes. "Elena Thorne!" he barked at the nurse at the front desk. "Where is my wife?" The nurse looked up, startled. But before she could answer, Marcus stepped out from a private waiting room. Marcus looked pale, his grey suit rumpled. He looked at Sebastian with eyes filled with a mix of pity and fury. "Marcus!" Sebastian rushed to him, grabbing his friend's shoulders. "Tell me she's okay. Tell me I can see her." Marcus didn't speak. He just shook his head slightly and pointed toward a doctor walking towards them. Dr. Aris Thorne, no relation, purely coincidental, but a renowned trauma surgeon, looked exhausted. He pulled off his surgical cap. "Mr. Thorne?" the doctor asked. "Yes. How is she?" "Your wife is in a coma," the doctor said, his voice professional but grave. "She suffered severe cranial trauma and massive internal bleeding. We've managed to stabilize her for now, but she is critical." Sebastian let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Okay, she's alive. That's what matters. She's alive." The doctor hesitated. He looked at Marcus, then back at Sebastian. "Mr. Thorne, there is something else. The trauma to the abdomen was extensive." Sebastian frowned. "Abdomen? We did everything we could," the doctor said softly, "but we couldn't save the pregnancy. Mrs. Thorne miscarried at the scene." The silence that followed was deafening. It was louder than the storm outside. "Pregnancy?" Sebastian whispered. "She was 14 weeks along," the doctor said. "It was a boy." Sebastian stumbled back until his back hit the cold white wall of the hospital corridor. 14 weeks? He didn't know. How did he not know? He thought back to the last few months. He had been so busy with Isabella. He had been coming home late, leaving early. He remembered Elena trying to talk to him 2 weeks ago at breakfast. "Sebastian, I have some news." "Can we have dinner on Friday?" she had asked, her eyes bright with hope. "I can't, Elena. The Tokyo deal," he had snapped. She had been trying to tell him. "Can I see her?" Sebastian asked, his voice cracking. "Briefly. ICU bed 4. Sebastian walked into the room like a man walking to his execution. The room was filled with the rhythmic beeping of machines, the only thing keeping Elena tethered to this world. She looked so small in the bed. Her face was bruised, a bandage wrapped around her head. Tubes ran in and out of her arms. Sebastian fell to his knees beside the bed. He took her hand. It was cold. "I'm sorry," he sobbed, burying his face in her palm. "I didn't know, Elle. I didn't know." His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. He pulled it out, angry, ready to throw it across the room. It was a notification. Voicemail. Elena. Received, 9:30 p.m. His blood froze. The call he declined. It had gone to voicemail. His hands shaking violently, he held the phone to his ear. The recording started with the sound of screeching metal and rain. It wasn't a calm call. "Seb!" Elena's voice was panicked, screaming over the sound of a horn. "Seb, pick up! The truck, he's swerving! Oh God, Sebastian, please pick up! I'm scared! I wanted to tell you tonight about the baby! I love you! Sebastian!" Then, a deafening crash, the sound of glass shattering, metal crumpling. Then, silence. Then, a faint, weak whisper, barely audible against the rain. "Why didn't you answer?" The recording ended. Sebastian stared at the phone. At 9:30 p.m., while he was kissing Isabella, while he was laughing about his nagging wife, Elena was screaming his name as she was crushed by a truck. He vomited right there on the sterile hospital floor. 3 days passed. Sebastian didn't leave the hospital. He didn't shower. He didn't shave. He sat in the chair, watching Elena's chest rise and fall with the mechanical ventilator. Isabella tried to visit once. She walked into the waiting room, wearing a black dress that was a little too tight, holding a bouquet of lilies. "Sebastian," she said softly. Sebastian looked up from his hands. When he saw her, he didn't feel desire. He felt a hatred so pure it almost blinded him. "Get out," he said. "Seb, don't be like that. It was an accident. You have needs, you were stressed. I said get out," Sebastian roared, standing up. He grabbed the vase of flowers from the side table and hurled it at the wall next to her head. It shattered, water splashing everywhere. "If you ever come near me or my wife again, I will destroy you. I will make sure you never work in this city again. Get out!" Isabella fled, terrified. But banning Isabella didn't fix the silence in the room. On the 4th day, Elena woke up. It wasn't like the movies. She didn't flutter her eyes open and smile. She gasped, choking on the intubation tube. Nurses rushed in. Alarms blared. Sebastian was pushed into the corner. When the dust settled and the tube was out, she lay there, breathing raggedly. Sebastian rushed to her side. "Elena, Elle, it's me. I'm here." Elena slowly turned her head. Her eyes, usually warm and brown like autumn leaves, were dull, flat. She looked at him. She looked at his tears. She looked at his hand, gripping hers. And then she pulled her hand away. It was a weak movement. She barely had any strength, but the intention was clear. She didn't want him touching her. "Where is my baby?" she rasped. Her voice was like sandpaper. Sebastian felt tears streaming down his face. "Elle, there was an accident. The doctors, they couldn't—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Elena stared at the ceiling. She didn't cry. That was the scariest part. She just stared at the fluorescent lights. "I called you," she whispered. "I know," Sebastian pleaded. I didn't hear it. It was loud." Elena turned her head slowly to look him dead in the eye. "You declined it." Sebastian froze. "I saw the screen," she whispered. I had you on speed dial, waiting for you to pick up. Before the car hit, I saw the call disconnect. You sent me to voicemail. Elena, Who were you with? No one. I was in a meeting. Don't lie to me, she said, her voice gaining a sudden, terrifying strength. Not now. Not after my son is dead. Sebastian crumbled. He couldn't lie to her face. Not now. I was with Isabella. Elena closed her eyes. A single tear leaked out, tracking through the dirt and bruises on her cheek. Get out, she said. Elena, please. We can work this out. I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. You didn't just cheat, Sebastian, she said, her voice hollow. You chose her. In the moment I needed you to save me, you chose her. And because of that, I was alone when our son died. He was my son too, Sebastian cried. Elena opened her eyes. They were ice cold. No, you don't get to claim him. You were too busy being a husband to your mistress. She pressed the nurse call button with a shaking hand. I want a lawyer, she said to the nurse who entered. And I want security to remove this man from my room. Elena, you can't do this. I'm your husband. Not anymore, she said. She turned away from him, facing the window. You died in that car wreck with me, Sebastian. The man standing here is a stranger. Security arrived 2 minutes later. Sebastian Thorne, a billionaire who owned half the city, was dragged out of the ICU, screaming his wife's name, while she lay in silence, staring at the rain. This was only the beginning of his penance. He thought losing the baby was the worst punishment. But he was wrong. Elena was about to show him what true loss felt like. The morning after Sebastian was thrown out of the hospital, he woke up in the master bedroom of his penthouse. For a second, he reached across the bed, expecting to feel Elena's warmth. He felt only cold, 1,000-thread count Egyptian cotton. Reality crashed down on him. The affair, the call, the baby. He sat up, his head pounding. I can fix this, he muttered to the empty room. I'm Sebastian Thorne. I fix everything. He called his personal assistant. Get the best florist in New York. I want 500 white roses sent to Mount Sinai, room 402. And call Cartier. Tell them I need the Diamond Panther bracelet, the one Elena looked at last year. Have it delivered to the hospital within the hour. He showered, shaved, and put on his armor, a charcoal bespoke suit. He convinced himself that Elena was just in shock. Grief made people say things they didn't mean. She couldn't really unlove him overnight. They had been together for 10 years. When he arrived at Mount Sinai 2 hours later, walking with the confidence of a man who owned the building, he carried a small velvet box. He marched to the ICU. He prepared his apology speech. He would beg, he would plead, he would promise to cut Isabella off. He already had. And eventually, Elena would forgive him. She always forgave him. But when he reached room 402, the door was wide open. The bed was stripped. The machines were off. The room smelled of disinfectant and emptiness. A nurse was changing the trash bag. Where is she? Sebastian demanded, panic rising in his chest. Where is my wife? The nurse looked up, unfazed. Mrs. Thorne was discharged 2 hours ago. Discharged? She was in a coma yesterday. She can't walk. She was transferred, the nurse said. A private medical transport team came for her, signed off by her legal proxy. I am her legal proxy, Sebastian shouted. Not anymore, sir. Sebastian froze. He ran out of the hospital and called Marcus. Marcus, where is she? Did you move her? I didn't do anything, Seb, Marcus said, his voice cold. But you should probably go home. A courier just dropped something off for you. Sebastian raced back to the penthouse. He threw open the heavy oak doors. Elena, he called out. Silence. He ran to her closet. It was empty. Not just empty. It was scrubbed clean. Her clothes, her shoes, her perfume bottles on the vanity, all gone. It was as if she had never lived there. On the kitchen island, there was a single manila envelope. Sebastian walked toward it slowly. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside were 3 things. First, a legal document. Petition for dissolution of marriage. It wasn't a negotiation. Elena wasn't asking for half his fortune. She wasn't asking for alimony. She wasn't asking for the penthouse. Under the section Assets Requested, there was a single word written in bold type: none. She wanted nothing from him. That hurt more than if she had taken everything. It meant his money, the thing he used to control everyone, was worthless to her. Second, a glossy photograph. It was a sonogram, a black and white grainy image of a small, curling form. On the back, in Eleanor's handwriting, it said, "His name was Leo. He had your nose. You will never meet him." Third, his wedding ring. The platinum band she had placed on his finger 10 years ago. Sebastian dropped the papers. He clutched the sonogram to his chest and fell to the kitchen floor. He didn't scream. He just sat there in the silence of his multi-million-dollar home, realizing that the silence was going to last forever. She hadn't just left him. She had erased him. 5 years later. New York City had changed, but Sebastian Thorne had stayed the same, only colder, harder, and richer. Thorne Global was now the undisputed king of logistics. Sebastian had ruthlessly acquired every competitor. He worked 18 hours a day. He didn't date. He didn't attend parties unless necessary. He fired people for minor infractions. The tabloids called him the Ice King. They speculated about why his wife had vanished, but Sebastian had spent millions burying the story. As far as the world knew, they had divorced quietly, and she had moved abroad. He hadn't heard from Eleanor in 5 years. Private investigators had failed. She had ghosted the entire planet. It was a rainy Tuesday in November when Marcus walked into Sebastian's office. Marcus was still the CLO, but their friendship was dead. They spoke only of business. "We have a problem," Marcus said, dropping a file on the glass desk. "I don't have problems. I have solutions." Sebastian didn't look up from his laptop. "What is it?" "A new firm is bidding on the Port Authority contract. They just undercut our bid by 15%. Sebastian laughed dryly. "Impossible. Our margins are razor thin. Anyone bidding that low is committing financial suicide. Who are they?" "Phoenix Enterprises," Marcus said. "Based in Zurich. They popped up out of nowhere 2 years ago. They've been eating up market share in Europe, and now they're coming for New York." "Find out who the CEO is and buy them out," Sebastian ordered. "We can't. The CEO is anonymous. The company is held by a blind trust." "Everyone has a price, Marcus. Arrange a meeting. I want to see them at the Global Tech Gala tonight. If they're playing in my city, they need to kiss the ring." The Global Tech Gala was the event of the season. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was transformed into a glittering arena of power and wealth. Sebastian stood at the top of the stairs, holding a glass of whiskey, scanning the crowd. He was bored. He hated these people. They were all fakes. "Mr. Thorne," a voice came from behind him. "You seem to be looking for someone." Sebastian turned. He stopped breathing. The glass of whiskey slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor, splashing onto his polished shoes. No one moved to clean it up. Standing before him was a woman. But not just any woman. She wore a dress of blood-red silk that hugged every curve, with a back that plunged dangerously low. Her hair, once long and wavy, was now a sharp, chic bob cut that framed her face like a blade. She wore diamonds that Sebastian hadn't bought her. But it was her face, The scar on her temple from the accident was gone, covered by makeup or surgery. Her eyes, once warm and brown, were now hardened steel. "Elena?" Sebastian whispered. The name felt foreign on his tongue after 5 years. She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator spotting a wounded deer. "Hello, Sebastian," she said. Her voice was different, lower, more commanded. It lacked the hesitation she used to have. You're alive," Sebastian stammered. He reached out to touch her arm, desperate to verify she was real. She didn't flinch, but a man stepped between them. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark skin and eyes that looked at Sebastian with utter contempt. He placed a protective hand on Eleanor's lower back. "I believe the lady prefers not to be touched," the man said calmly. Sebastian glared at him. "Get out of my way. Who are you?" "I'm Julian Banks," the man said smoothly, COO of Phoenix Enterprises. Sebastian's eyes snapped back to Elena. "Phoenix? You?" "I'm the CEO, Sebastian," Elena said, taking a sip of champagne. "Did you receive my bid for the Port Authority contract? I hear Thorn Global is panicking." Sebastian felt dizzy. The wife who used to ask him for money to buy groceries, the wife who didn't know the difference between a stock and a bond, was the CEO of the company trying to destroy him? "How?" he rasped. You didn't know anything about business." Eleanor took a step closer. She smelled of a new perfume, something spicy and dangerous, not the floral scent she used to wear. "I had 5 years, Sebastian," she whispered, leaning in so only he could hear. "I spent 1 year learning how to walk again. I spent 1 year grieving my son. And I spent 3 years learning how to destroy you. Do you remember what you did while I was dying in that car?" Sebastian flinched. "You declined my call," she said. "Now, I'm going to decline your future." She turned to Julian. "Come, darling. The air here is stale." As she walked away, her red dress trailing behind her like a stream of blood, every camera in the room flashed. Sebastian stood amidst the broken glass of his whiskey, realizing that the ghost he had mourned was actually a monster he had created. The morning after the gala, the atmosphere inside Thorn Tower was brittle enough to snap. It was 5 a.m. The sun hadn't yet risen over the Hudson River, but Sebastian Thorn was already pacing the length of his executive conference room. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected his own image back at him, a man running on 2 hours of sleep, fueled by espresso, and a burning, humiliated rage. He had seen a ghost the night before. Elena, his wife, alive, rich, powerful. But fear wasn't the dominant emotion coursing through Sebastian's veins. It was arrogance. He was Sebastian Thorn. He had built a logistics empire from the ground up. Elena? She was a housewife who used to get anxious ordering at a restaurant. She might have a new haircut and a fancy title, but she couldn't possibly outmaneuver him in his own arena. "Marcus!" Sebastian barked as the heavy glass doors slid open. Marcus Sterling, his chief legal officer and best friend of 15 years, walked in. He carried a single, slim leather briefcase. He didn't look tired. In fact, he looked strangely awake, his eyes clear and focused. "I want a war room set up," Sebastian ordered, not bothering with a greeting. He slammed a stack of files onto the mahogany table. "I want a full forensic audit of Phoenix Enterprises. I want to know who their investors are, who their board members are, and what dirty laundry they have. I want them buried under regulatory lawsuits by lunch." Marcus didn't move toward the files. He walked to his usual seat at the right hand of the table, placed his briefcase down, and remained standing. "Did you hear me?" Sebastian snapped, turning to face him. "I said I want them buried." "We can't do that, Sebastian," Marcus said. His voice was even, devoid of its usual warmth. Why the hell not? I pay you to be a shark, Marcus. So bite. Because, Marcus said, sliding a single white envelope across the polished mahogany surface. I'm not your shark anymore. Sebastian stared at the envelope. What is this? My resignation. Effective immediately. Sebastian let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. You can't resign. We're in the middle of a hostile bid. And besides, you have a non-compete clause. If you walk out that door, I will sue you into oblivion. You won't be able to practice law in a lemonade stand, let alone a corporation. Marcus smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the sad, pitying smile of a man looking at a rabid dog that needed to be put down. Actually, check the date on my contract, Sebastian, Marcus said softly. My 5-year non-compete expired last Tuesday. You forgot to renew it. Sebastian froze. The memory flashed in his mind. An email from HR 2 weeks ago, flagged urgent. Contract renewal, M. Sterling. He had archived it. He was too busy obsessing over the Port Authority deal, too busy juggling the SEC regulators, too busy trying to arrange a weekend getaway with a new runway model. I can fix that, Sebastian stammered, the first crack appearing in his armor. We can draft a new one right now. I'll double your salary. I'll give you stock options. It's not about the money, Seb, Marcus said. It hasn't been about the money for a long time. Then what is it? Loyalty? We've been friends since college. I was the best man at your wedding. And you were a terrible husband to a woman who deserved better, Marcus shot back, his calm finally breaking. The venom in his voice stunned Sebastian. Do you know who called me that night, Sebastian? From the ambulance? The room went deadly silent. The hum of the air conditioning seemed to roar. The police? Sebastian whispered. The EMTs, Marcus corrected him. Eleanor had me listed as her emergency contact, not you. Because she knew. Even before she got in that car, she knew that if she was ever in trouble, you wouldn't pick up. She knew she was second place to your ego. I didn't know. Shut up, Sebastian, Marcus said. I went to the hospital that night. I saw her broken. I saw her mourn the son you didn't even know existed. And when she woke up, when she asked for help disappearing, I didn't hesitate. I helped her leave. I helped her build Phoenix. Sebastian felt like the floor was tilting. You? You've been working with her for 5 years? Every single day, Marcus nodded. I stayed here, in this office, listening to you brag about your conquests, watching you cut corners, gathering evidence. I wasn't your CLO, Sebastian. I was a spy. You traitor, Sebastian hissed, stepping forward, his fists clenched. Sit down, Mr. Thorne. The voice came from the doorway. It was cool, commanding, and sliced through the tension like a razor blade. Elena walked in. If she looked dangerous at the gala, she looked lethal now. She wore a tailored white suit that cost more than most people's cars. Her heels clicked rhythmically against the marble floor. Click, 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 a countdown to detonation. She didn't look at Marcus. She looked straight at Sebastian. You can't be in here, Sebastian snarled, though his voice lacked its usual fire. Security. Security has been instructed to stand down, Elena said calmly. She walked to the head of the table, Sebastian's chair. She rested a manicured hand on the leather headrest. Because technically, I own the building. You're delusional, Sebastian spat. Thorne Global is a fortress. My debt is private, held by the Zurich Bank. The Zurich Bank, Elena repeated, a small amused smirk playing on her lips. Do you know who the majority shareholder of the Zurich Bank's private equity arm is? Sebastian blinked. No one knows. It's a blind trust. It's the Roth family trust, Elena said. So, My mother's maiden name was Roth, Elena said softly. Sebastian stopped breathing. The name hung in the air. Roth, as in the European banking dynasty, as in old money. Money that made Sebastian's tech fortune look like pocket change. I didn't know, Sebastian whispered. You never said. You never asked, Elena countered, her voice devoid of pity. In 10 years of marriage, did you ever ask about my grandparents? Did you ever ask why I spoke French so fluently? No. You assumed I was just a poor girl from Ohio who got lucky marrying you. You loved being the savior, Sebastian. You loved thinking you rescued me. She walked around the table, closing the distance between them. My grandmother left me the trust when she passed away 7 years ago. I never touched it because I wanted to build a life with you, not your bank account. But when I needed to burn you to the ground, it came in handy. She dropped a heavy file on the table. It landed with a thud that echoed like a gavel strike. Phoenix Enterprises, funded by the Roth Trust, has acquired 51% of the voting shares of Thorn Global's distressed debt. We aren't just a competitor, Sebastian. We are your creditors, and as of this morning, we are calling in the loans. Sebastian scrambled to grab the file. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the numbers. It was a massacre. Tranches A, B, and C of his corporate debt, hundreds of millions of dollars, were now owned by Phoenix. You have 48 hours, Elena said, checking her watch as if she had a lunch reservation to get to. Repay $1.2 billion in full, or Phoenix Enterprises exercises its right to convert the debt into equity, which would give me controlling interest in the company. I don't have $1.2 billion liquid, Sebastian shouted, throwing the papers down. My assets are tied up in ships, in warehouses, in the Tokyo merger. You know I can't pay that. I know, Elena said. That's the point. You're destroying the company just to hurt me. Thousands of people work here, Elena. The company will be fine, she assured him, under new management, efficient management, ethical management. I won't let you, Sebastian growled. I'll fight you. I'll drag this out in court for years. I'll countersue for conflict of interest regarding Marcus. I'll bury you in litigation. Elena sighed, looking bored. She turned to Marcus. He still thinks he has leverage. Show him the other thing. Marcus opened his briefcase. He pulled out a small USB drive and placed it on the table. What is that? Sebastian asked, wary. 2 days ago, Elena said. Isabella Vance called my office. Sebastian flinched at the name of his former mistress, the woman he had declined Elena's call for. She's broke, Sebastian, Elena continued. Apparently you cut her off quite abruptly after the accident. She was looking for a payout. She wanted to sell her story to the tabloids. The Billionaire's secret affair. She has photos, she has texts. She even has a voicemail you left her that night, promising to leave your wife. Sebastian felt the blood drain from his face. If that got out now, amidst the financial instability, the stock wouldn't just drop. It would be delisted. The board would fire him for cause. He would be a pariah. I bought the rights, Elena said simply. Exclusive ownership of her story, her photos and her silence. Cost me $1 million. Pocket change. You bought my mistress? I bought the gun you pointed at your own head, Elena corrected. She leaned in close, invading his personal space. For the first time in 5 years, he could smell her perfume. It wasn't the soft vanilla she used to wear. It was something spicy, dark, and dangerous. Here is your choice, Elena whispered. You surrender. You sign over the CEO position to me. You transfer your voting shares. If you do that, I bury the Isabella story. You leave with your reputation intact, if not your pride. And if I don't? Then I release the story on the same day I declare the debt in default. You lose the company, you lose your money, and you become the most hated man in America. The man who cheated on his pregnant wife while she was dying on the side of the road. She pulled back, her eyes cold and hard as diamonds. "Tick-tock, Sebastian. You have 48 hours. She turned on her heel and walked toward the door, Marcus falling into step behind her. "Elena!" Sebastian called out, his voice cracking. She stopped at the door but didn't turn around. "Why?" he asked, his voice sounding small and broken in the massive room. "Why go to all this trouble? Why not just divorce me and take half?" She turned her head slightly, just enough so he could see her profile. "Because taking half would imply we were partners," she said. "And as you made very clear that night, I was never your partner. I was just an option you declined." The doors slid shut. Sebastian was left alone in the silence of the war room. He looked at the empty chair where Marcus used to sit. He looked at the file that detailed the death of his empire. He reached for his phone to call someone. Anyone who could fix this. But as he stared at the screen, he realized the terrifying truth. He had spent his life building a fortress to keep people out. Now, the walls were closing in, and he was trapped inside with the only thing he had left, the echo of a phone call he never answered. 48 hours later, the storm that had been threatening New York City for days finally broke. Rain lashed against the glass walls of the CEO's office on the 80th floor of Thorn Tower, turning the panoramic view of Manhattan into a blurred, weeping gray watercolor. Inside, the office was dark. The motion sensor lights in the hallway outside had flickered off hours ago, leaving only the glow of the city and a single desk lamp illuminating the wreckage of Sebastian Thorne's life. Cardboard boxes lined the glass walls, but they were empty. Sebastian hadn't packed. He couldn't bring himself to put his life into boxes. To pack was to admit defeat, and Sebastian Thorne did not lose. He negotiated. He pivoted. He conquered. But as he stared at the amber liquid in his crystal tumbler, his fifth scotch of the evening, he realized there was no pivot left. The past 48 hours had been a blur of legal screaming matches and financial hemorrhaging. The news had leaked, just as Elena promised it would. Mysterious Phoenix Enterprises initiates hostile takeover of Thorn Global. The stock had plummeted 60% by the closing bell yesterday. Today, the board of directors, men and women Sebastian had made rich, people he had invited to his wedding, had voted unanimously to remove him as CEO, pending an internal investigation. He was a king without a kingdom, sitting on a throne that had already been sold for scrap. The heavy oak doors to his office creaked open. Sebastian didn't turn around. He stayed facing the window, watching the rain drown the city. "You're late," Sebastian rasped. His voice was rough, the result of 2 days of shouting and 2 nights of drinking. "The cleaners come at 10. You might want to tell them not to bother dusting my desk." "I own the cleaning company now, Sebastian. They'll come when I tell them to." The voice was soft, but it carried a weight that hit him harder than a scream. It was Eleanor. He slowly swiveled his leather chair around. She stood in the doorway, framed by the shadows. She wasn't wearing the red dress from the gala, nor the white power suit from the boardroom. She was wearing a simple black trench coat, belted at the waist, with black leather gloves. She looked like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was. "You came to gloat?" Sebastian asked, gesturing vaguely with his glass. "Come on in. Pour yourself a drink. It's top shelf, paid for by the company credit card, while it still works." Eleanor walked into the room. She didn't take a seat. She stood on the other side of the massive mahogany desk, the desk that had always served as a barrier between Sebastian and the rest of the world. Now it felt like a barricade he was cowering behind. I didn't come to gloat, Sebastian, she said, pulling off her gloves slowly, finger by finger. I came to finish this. It is finished! Sebastian slammed his glass down. Ideally, it would have shattered for dramatic effect, but the heavy crystal just made a dull, pathetic thud. You won. You and your puppet, Marcus. You own the debt. You own the board. What else do you want? My blood? Your blood has no value to me, Elena said, her face impassive. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick document, bound in blue legal paper. She slid it across the desk. It stopped inches from his hand. Sebastian looked at it. What is this? The surrender terms. It's an ultimatum. Sebastian laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I have nothing left to give you, Elena. You took the company. You destroyed my reputation. The SEC is crawling up my ass because of the tip you gave them about the Tokyo merger. I'm done. You're not done yet, she corrected him. You still have the penthouse. You still have your freedom. And you still have your pride. I can take all three of those away with a single phone call. Sebastian narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? Elena walked around the desk. For a moment, Sebastian thought she might touch him. His heart hammered, a mix of fear and a twisted, lingering desire. But she walked past him to the window, looking out at the storm. Marcus was a very diligent lawyer, Sebastian. When he switched sides, he didn't just bring his legal expertise, he brought his files. She turned to face him, her silhouette dark against the lightning flashing outside. We know about the Cayman accounts, Sebastian. The consulting fees you were funneling out of the logistics budget into your private offshore holdings. That's not just mismanagement. That's embezzlement. That's fraud. That's 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Sebastian felt the blood drain from his face. He felt cold, colder than the rain outside. That was for tax purposes. Everyone does it. Not everyone gets caught, Elena said. I have the wire transfers. I have the dates. I have the signatures. She pointed to the blue document on the desk. Option A, she said calmly. I hand the file to the district attorney tomorrow morning. You go to prison. The government seizes your personal assets, the penthouse, the Hamptons estate, the cars, to pay restitution. You rot in a cell, and you die with nothing. Sebastian stared at her. She wasn't bluffing. He knew that look. It was the same look she used to have when she was determined to finish a difficult puzzle or fix a broken vase. Only now, she was fixing the error of his existence. And option B? He whispered. Option B, Elena said, stepping back toward the desk. You sign that document. It transfers your remaining 12% equity in Thorn Global to me. Voluntary forfeiture. In exchange, the Cayman file disappears. You keep the penthouse. You keep your personal bank accounts. What's left of them. You walk away a disgraced businessman, but a free one. Sebastian looked at the papers. It was a complete surrender. If he signed, he was giving her the last piece of himself. Why? He asked, his voice shaking. Why offer me a way out? If you hate me this much, why not send me to jail? Elena looked at him for a long time. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Because prison is too easy, she said finally. In prison you can play the victim. You can blame the system. You can tell yourself you were framed. She leaned over the desk, her face inches from his. He could see the faint lines around her eyes, the only sign of the years of pain he had caused. I want you out here, in the real world, she whispered. I want you to wake up every morning in that empty penthouse. I want you to walk down the streets of the city you used to own and see my name on the buildings. I want you to see me happy. I want you to see me succeed. I want you to live with the knowledge that you had it all. The company, the money, the wife who worshipped the ground you walked on, the son we should have had, and you threw it all away for a phone call you didn't answer. The mention of the baby hit Sebastian like a physical blow. He flinched. "Elena," he choked out. "About the baby. Leo, I go to the cemetery. Every month, I bring flowers." He expected this to soften her. He wanted credit for his grief. But Elena's expression didn't change. It hardened. "Do you?" she asked. "Or do you send your assistant to do it?" Sebastian opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down. She knew. She always knew. "That's the difference between us, Sebastian," she said, straightening up. "You outsource your love. You outsourced our marriage to jewelry stores and florists. You outsourced your grief to your assistant. You even tried to outsource your happiness to a mistress because real intimacy was too much work for you." "I loved you," Sebastian shouted, the sudden burst of anger startling even him. He stood up, swaying slightly. "I loved you, Elena. I gave you everything. You lived in a palace." "I lived in a hotel where I was the only guest," she shouted back, her voice finally cracking with the raw emotion she had been holding it back. "I didn't want the palace, Sebastian. I wanted you. I wanted my husband to come home and ask me how my day was. I wanted you to look at me the way you looked at your stock portfolio. But I was just an asset to you, a depreciating asset." She took a deep breath, composing herself instantly. The mask of the CEO slid back into place. "But that doesn't matter anymore. That woman died in the wreck." She tapped the document with a manicured fingernail. "Sign the papers, Sebastian, or I call the DA." Sebastian looked at the pen lying on the desk. It was a Mont Blanc engraved with his initials, a gift from Eleanor for his 30th birthday. He picked it up. The metal was cold. He looked at the document. Transfer of ownership. If he signed this, Thorn Global was gone. His legacy was gone. "Isabella," Sebastian said, grasping at straws. You said you had tapes. If I signed this, you destroy those too?" Elena let out a short, sharp laugh. "Oh, Sebastian, you still don't get it. I don't care about Isabella. She's meaningless. She was just a symptom of your disease. I bought her story to silence her, not to use her. I don't want the world to talk about your affair. I want them to forget you even exist." That hurt more than the threat of prison. She didn't want to destroy his image. She wanted to erase it. Sebastian uncapped the pen. His hand trembled violently. He pressed the nib to the paper. "Sir." The ink flowed dark and permanent. "A, B, A." He stopped. He looked up at her one last time. His eyes were wet. "If I had picked up," he whispered, his voice breaking into a sob. "If I had answered the phone that night, would we be okay?" The question hung in the air, heavy with 5 years of regret. Elena looked at him. For a split second, her eyes softened. For a microsecond, he saw the wife he had lost. He saw the woman who used to make him pancakes on Sundays. He saw the mother of his unborn child. "If you had picked up," she said softly, "you would have heard me tell you that I loved you. You would have heard me tell you about our son. And I would have died knowing I wasn't alone." Her eyes hardened again, turning back into steel. "But you didn't pick up, and we will never know." Sebastian let out a ragged breath. A tear fell from his face and landed on the paper, creating a small wet spot next to the signature line. He finished signing his name. Sebastian Thorn. He dropped the pen. It rolled across the desk and fell onto the floor. "Take it," he whispered. "Take it all." Elena reached out and took the document. She checked the signature. She nodded, satisfied. She placed it into her bag. "The cleaners will be here in 10 minutes, she said, her tone strictly business now. "Security will escort you out. Please leave your building pass on the desk." She turned and walked toward the door. "Elena," Sebastian called out. She stopped, her hand on the brass handle. She didn't turn around. "Are you happy?" he asked. "You have your revenge. You have the company. Are you happy?" Elena stood still for a moment. The rain battered the glass, a relentless drumbeat. "Happiness is a luxury for people who haven't lost everything, Sebastian," she said quietly. "I'm not happy. I'm just even." She opened the door and walked out. The heavy oak door clicked shut, sealing Sebastian inside the tomb of his own making. He stood there for a long time. He looked around the office. The leather chairs, the expensive art, the panoramic view of the city he used to think he owned. It all looked like garbage now. He walked over to his desk. His phone was sitting there. He picked it up. He scrolled through his contacts. Marcus, deleted. Isabella, blocked. Mom, deceased. Dad, deceased. Elena. He stared at her name. He hadn't deleted it. For 5 years he had kept it. He pressed the call button. He knew the number was disconnected. He knew she wouldn't answer. He just wanted to hear the silence. The phone didn't even ring. It just gave a sharp, 3-tone beep, indicating the line was out of service. Sebastian lowered the phone. He walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Below him, millions of lights twinkled in the city. Millions of people going home to their families, answering their phones, living lives he would never understand. He had declined the call, and in the end, the silence was the loudest sound in the world. He turned off the desk lamp, plunging the room into darkness, and walked toward the door to meet security. It was time to leave. And so, Sebastian Thorne learned the hardest lesson of all. You don't know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory you can never change. He traded his forever for a night of pleasure, and he paid for it with the rest of his life. Elena rose from the ashes, not just to survive, but to conquer, proving that the most dangerous creature on earth is a woman who has nothing left to lose. What did you think of Sebastian's punishment? Did he deserve to lose everything? Or was Elena too harsh? Personally, I think silence was the loudest revenge she could have taken. If this story touched you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. We upload daily dramas that will break your heart and put it back together. Thanks for watching, and remember, answer the call.